Welcome to Story Matrix, another day, another story. Hey everyone. The world is a bad place, and I know it feels hopeless sometimes, but there is always something to be grateful about. Today, The Matrix presents you with a story about an alternate universe where, in our reality, we celebrated, and in their reality, it was the beginning of a dark, dark future. I'm talking about a universe where Hitler won World War II. Not everyone knows how close the world came to making a deal with Hitler. In June 1940, a serious faction within the British government urged making peace with Germany. In September 1940, the RAF was within an inch of defeat, leaving Britain open to invasion. Nazi Germany was considered the strongest country in the world at that time. Their military was in a league of its own. No country even came close to their military might. If it weren't for a couple of blunders made by Hitler and his commanders, we would be in that grim reality you saw earlier. Before we talk about the chilling reality of Hitler's domination of the world, let's see what those two blunders were that resulted in our reality. Nazi Germany prematurely invades Russia. In 1939, before the start of World War II, Stalin and Hitler signed a non-aggression treaty for 10 years known as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Yes, that's right. The USSR was actually on the side of Nazi Germany, and The Matrix showed the dark reality of this in an earlier video. So, click on the link in the description to check out the full video. But, in summary, Hitler invaded the USSR prematurely in 1941, when his troops were divided between helping Italy and fighting the British. This forced the USSR to join hands with the British, turning on Hitler. The second biggest blunder came at the hands of the Japanese. You see, Japan was ordered by Hitler to help him take over the Eastern Soviet Union. But instead, they decided to hit Pearl Harbor, dragging the US into the war. Possibly the biggest mistake that resulted in the Allies winning the war. Hitler envisioned Germany as the leader of the whole world. He always believed that World War II was just the first step in his path to a German world. As such, he envisioned the sequel to World War II, and this sequel would have been a bigger catastrophe than the sequel to Space Jam. And his sequels weren't running out of budget anytime soon, as he was prepared to wage war until he conquered the entire globe. Following the wins of World War II, the rebranding of the countries would soon begin. The countries Hitler deemed Nordic would be part of Greater Germany. Countries like Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, the German-speaking region of Switzerland, and part of Poland and the Soviet Union. His allies in this war would also get a chunk of the cake. Japan would, temporarily, receive the rest of the Soviet Union. Mussolini would be permitted to acquire lands approximating those of the Roman Empire. Except that Hitler intended to retain control of France and Great Britain, as well as Ireland, and convert Spain and Portugal into satellite states. He didn't forget about Africa, as the Afrikaners were implacable racists. Much after Hitler's own heart, he anticipated a pro-Nazi South Africa. He also wanted to restore the glory of Germany by getting back all the regions Germany lost in Africa after World War I. So, the Führer has gotten the land and restored glory to Germany, but what would this new German world look like? Well, the first thing should be obvious. The elimination of the subhumans, the lesser race. This would have been his top priority. After all, the man came up with more creative ways to kill the Jews than Steve Jobs was when designing the iPhone. So, he anticipated killing off the Jews and converting the rest of the races he deemed inferior into expendable labor. He anticipated a drop in the population, so he planned to legalize polygamy for men to impregnate as many German women as possible to repopulate the regions. And if that sounds exciting to you, The Matrix strongly advises you to see a therapist immediately. Now, we are forgetting a key point here. Hitler needed world domination, and only one country was strong enough to derail his plans for global domination. The United States of America. Even though the US was powerful enough, Hitler's racism blinded him to this fact. He always viewed the US as a mongrel race. And if you don't know what that means, it's just a slur used to describe people of multiple races. He believed that the US would fall apart from the inside because of multiple races. Even though by 1944, the United States was contributing not only the most manpower along with the most tanks, aircraft, and artillery to the war. Hitler still viewed the British as the greatest adversary to Nazi Germany. This was how much racism had blinded him to reality. But how would the US involvement affect Hitler's plans? To answer this, we need to consider what would have happened had the US not gotten involved in the war. This would have happened if Japan had done what Hitler had asked them to do. Hitler envisioned that he would have to conquer the whole world before hitting the US. By which point he believed they would fall apart on their own. He expected Japan to deliver him Asia and keep China occupied. But here's the fact. The US was so worried about Hitler occupying Europe by 1941 that they developed the Convair B-36, Peacemaker. The first intercontinental bomber, designed to hit Berlin from bases in Canada. Germany had an answer to the US as well with the America bomber, capable of hitting the skyscrapers of New York and causing damage similar to 9/11. But, by this point, the nuclear arms race had already begun. The US was working towards developing the nuclear bomb, but Germany was way behind on this technology. Would this have meant the US would win over Germany? Well, not necessarily. You see, the Soviets were working on the nuclear program as well, and they were slightly behind the US. With the Soviet Union under Hitler's control, he would have accelerated the nuclear program, and the reality? He might have wiped out the entire eastern seaboard. But, even if we take the nukes out of the picture, the whole world would have realized the grave threat Hitler posed. They would have come together in unison, led by the US, to defeat the greatest evil in the history of mankind. But this would have been a war of epic proportions. A war that would have ended in mutually assured destruction, wiping out humanity altogether. You see, this is the reality of Universe 6622b. The Allies, or the Mongrel race as they were called, ended up defeating Hitler's master race. But the cost of the war was too much to pay. Soon after, they ceased to exist.